All right, this is question 38 from our review. This one deals with the AP calendar class, and we're going to write two methods in this class. So they have some helper methods here. First one's called is leap year. This is going to return true if the year that we input is a leap year and false if it doesn't. Second one is this is the one we're going to write in part A, the number of leap years between year 1 and year 2. The next helper method is first day of year. So that'll return like January 1st, what day of the week that was. A 0 would be Sunday, a 1 would be Monday, and to 6 being Saturday. And then we have another helper method called day of year, where we can put a month, a day, and a year, and that'll tell us which day it is, like the 60th day of the year or the 100th day of the year. And then we are going to implement day of week in part B, which is going to input a month, a day, a year, and we're going to be able to represent what day of the week it is. Again, 0 being Sunday, 1 being Monday, and so on. All right, so first one is a number of leap years between year 1 and year 2. All right, now this problem doesn't really give us some examples to do. They show us a few examples of like first day of year and day of year, how those work. But they don't give us examples of like what our method should look like. So we would just have to kind of do it by hand. I'm going to have y'all just kind of trust that what we're going to do is correct. And I'll show you the answer key as well so we can compare it to the canonical answer. All right, so we're going to write the number of leap years, which is going to calculate how many leap years happen between 2 years. And these are inclusive. So we want to make sure to include both year 1 and year 2 in our answer. All right, so I'm going to go over to my coding environment over here. All right, so I've coded out the is leap year method, but that was one of the implementations not shown. But to make our program run, I needed that in there. And so we'll make sure to use that helper method when we do part A, which is right here, number of leap years. All right, so basically we need a variable that's going to count because we want to return a count of how many. So int c equals 0. We're going to do a loop. And I know exactly how many times I want this to run. I want to start at year 1 and end at year 2. So I'm going to do a for loop. Int I equals, and normally we do equals 0 here, but I don't want to equal 0. I want to start at year 1 with my for loop. And I want to do I less than or equal to, because we want to include year 2. So less than or equal to year 2. And we want to go up by 1 because we want to check every single year in between. And then I only want to update my counter variable if it is a leap year. And so remember that this leap year method is a Boolean. So I don't need to do like equals or anything like that. This is already a Boolean. So all I have to do is say if and then put my is leap year parentheses, and then I is taking on the value of my years. So if that is true, then I want to update my counter variable. If it is a leap year, I add 1 to my C. If it is not a leap year, I do nothing, and I just go to the next one. So that should be good, and then we just need to return our C at the end, and that's our answer. So nothing too crazy there. Let's take a look at the canonical solution. Where am I? Over here. All right, so for part A, initializes a numeric variable. So that's our int c equals 0. Good. Loops through each necessary year in the range. So responses will not earn a point if they consider years outside the range. So if we gone 0 to year 2, or if we gone past year 2 somehow, then it wouldn't have worked. For the first point, we would have not gotten a variable if we use the variable for loop control only. So int I equals 0 does not count. We had to have a separate int c that's our counter variable. We have to call is leap year in our answer. We did that in our if statement. Do not earn a point if they do not use a loop. So if we had not used a for loop or a while loop would have worked as well, then we would have not gotten that point, even if we called it. All right, updates our count based on the result of calling is leap year. Okay, we did that. If it is true, we updated our count. Not true, we didn't do anything. Once again, we had to use a loop. We had to initialize our counter variable, which happened up there. And use the result as a non-Boolean. So if we had somehow used is leap year as a non-Boolean, that wouldn't have worked out. Maybe if you said is leap year equals 1 or something like that, that would have lost a point. Returns count of leap years. So we looped from year 1 to year 2. We initialized our counter. We used a loop. We updated it correctly. So we would have lost the point if we updated it incorrectly, or if we returned it early inside the loop. So we made sure to return it outside the loop at the bottom of our program. So here's the canonical solution, which is identical to what we did. They used the word count instead of C, and they use Y instead of I. But there you go. All right, so that's part A. I'm going to pause for a second. I'll come back for part B. All right, so part B is going to, we need to calculate the day of the week. So we want to be able to input a month, a day, and a year, and output what day of the week that is. 0 for Sunday, 1 for Monday, 2 for Tuesday, and so on, all the way to 6 for Saturday. Okay, we are going to be required to use the first day of year method and the day of year method. So those are provided. They were mentioned up here. First day of year returns an integer value representing the day of the week for the first day of the year, January 1st. And so that's going to return a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for what day it is. Day of year is going to represent, is going to return an integer value for how many days it's been. So like 60th. So day of year for March 1st, 2017 returns 60 because 2017 was not a leap year. Day of year of 3/1/2016 would return 61 because 2016 is a leap year. Okay, so you can see how day of year works. You don't need to know how to code that part. That's given to you. We just have to be able to use it here. All right, so I'm going to go back to my coding environment. All right, again, I've coded out these, but these were implementation not shown, and we have to implement this. All right, so I did mine as a single return statement. And so basically, I was like, all right, I need to know where I started. So I started at day of year, or first day of year. What's it called? First day of year, and I input a year. Okay, so I'm going to call that and put parentheses around this. So first day of year, and then I have my year parameter up here. And so I'm putting that year parameter right in there. So that's where I started. And then I wanted to add how many days it's been since the first day of the year. Okay, so that is day of year. And for that one, I'll need all 3 parameters. Okay, so plus day of year. And then I put in month and day and year. All right, and then so I added those 2 together. And then my next thought was, well, there are 7 days in the week. So I can mod by 7. And so that'll do my modular division, and the remainder should be my answer. And so I modded by 7, and then I had to kind of like put a couple test cases in there, and I realized that I was not getting the right answer. Okay, so this is hard to do when you're writing it on paper because you can't test it with a computer like I could. All right, but I'm going to give you a little bit of a thought process to go through here. Okay, so let's just say the first day of the year is a Sunday, a 0. Okay, and then let's say you pick January 2nd. So the second day of the year. So this day of year method would return 2 because January 1st, January 2nd. First day of year would return 0. So it'd be 0 plus 2. And then if you mod by 7, 2 mod 7 is a 2. All right, and that would not be it. That would be wrong because January 2nd, if January 1st is a Sunday, 0, January 2nd is a Monday, which should be a 1, not a 2. So that's a problem. All right. And you can test a few more. So let's say that the first day was a Monday, 1, and then I do January 3rd. So that's 3 more days. So that's plus 3. So we have 4. 4 mod 7 is 4. Well, if I start on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, January 3rd would be a Wednesday, and that would be 0, 1, 2, 3. So every time I'm doing this, I'm getting a number 1 too big. So what you have to do to first day of the year plus day of the year, and then you have to subtract 1. Right, and the reason for this is because that Sunday starts at a 0 instead of starting at a 1. So if they had labeled Sunday as 1, although that would have affected our first day of year method, so we still probably would have had this issue. So that's just something you have to think through. If you had just done the first day of year plus day of the year modded by 7, you're probably going to get most of the points. We'll go through it here in a second, but you need that -1 there. I did all mine in 1 line, just like this. This does it. All right, and I think the canonical solution does a couple of lines, but this is basically it right here. All right, so let's take a look at that canonical solution. All right, so we'll go through the points here. We had to call first day of year, so we did that. If we did not use the given year, we would not get the credit there. So we have to put that correct parameter inside, called day of year. We would not have gotten the point if we put the arguments out of order. So it had to go month, day, year in that order. Calculate the value representing the day of the week. So if we don't have that -1, make any error in calculation, we're going to lose that point without the -1. Okay, but still, it's only 1 point there, and then returns the calculated value. This doesn't have to be correct. So if we return our calculated value, then we get the point there. So you would have gotten 3 out of 4 even without that -1, which is pretty good. Right? If you're getting 3 out of 4 on every part, then you're doing a really good job. All right, so we would not have gotten the point if we did not call. If we returned call of first day of year or day of year. So if we just returned one of those two things, that wouldn't have gotten the point. We had to actually do some math with it. And we'll not earn the point if we return a constant value. So if we just said return 5, then that's not going to get a point. We actually had to have a formula in there. So here's their canonical solution. They made a variable called start day, which they set to first day of year. So I didn't bother making a variable. They made a second variable called nth day, which got the day of the year. And then they made a variable called return day, and that's where they did the math. First day, nth day, -1, mod by 7, and then they returned it right there. All right, so that's it for 38.